All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. In an unprecedented move on Monday, President Trump said that he's firing a Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. But Cook is saying not so fast, as she said she would not step down from that position, saying, quote, "I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy as I have been doing it since 2022. And in fact, Cook said that she would be suing to challenge Trump's actions. For more on this, let's go out to Connor Hansen with the latest.
President Trump is trying to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Trump has repeatedly called for the Fed to lower interest rates, denouncing its chair, Jerome Powell. Replacing Powell and Cook could give the president more influence over rate decisions.
Well, we have some very good people for that position. Jerome, too late. He's too late. Nickname is too late. Costing us a lot of money, hurting the housing.
After serving on the board since 2022, Lisa Cook has been accused of mortgage fraud by Trump's director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Bill Pulte says Cook declared 2 of her homes in different states as her primary residence when getting mortgages. But she hasn't been charged with a crime.
Lisa Cook has big problems. They're going to continue to get bigger. I believe the president has ample cause to fire Lisa Cook.
While lowering rates could solve short-term issues, some economists worry firing a governor could compromise the Fed's future political independence. Lisa Cook, who was appointed by President Biden, says she won't resign and will keep doing her job. She released a statement saying, quote, "President Trump purported to fire me for a cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so." Cook has hired high-profile attorney Abby Lowell, who also represented Hunter Biden. Lowell says they have filed a lawsuit challenging Cook's firing. Last week, Jerome Powell suggested rates could be cut as soon as next month because of the labor market. While Powell's term ends in May, Lisa Cook could serve until 2038. In New York, Connor Hansen, Fox News.
All right, thank you so much for that, Connor, as we're now joined by senior reporter there with Market Watch, Greg Robb. Greg, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And obviously, this is an unprecedented move. What comes next in terms of this saga?
Good evening. Thanks for having me on. What comes next is, looks like we're going to go to a courthouse, a federal courthouse, and start the legal process that might drag on for a little bit here. Cook is going to try to stay in her seat. She doesn't think that the president has the authority to remove her. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out.
And obviously, we've seen President Trump, go after Jerome Powell. But these Federal Reserve governors, there's a dozen of them. Why in particular do you think he targeted Lisa Cook in this one?
Well, it's hard to read the president's mind, but the president really wants interest rates to come down. And the Fed is set up to kind of change very slowly. As your commentator or the reporter said at the start of this interview, that Lisa Cook is in a 14-year term. She doesn't have to leave the Fed until 2038. So think about that, how many times you've heard that. And, that's very far in the future. So the Fed moves slowly, and Trump wants them to move quickly to lower rates. So he's putting all the pressure on her. It sort of looks like they decided at the White House that removing Powell wasn't a good idea, but they have sort of focused now on Cook.
Could this be a testing of the waters of sorts? Because you mentioned the potential to remove Powell, although his term there with the Fed is very much shorter, because Lisa Cook could be on that board until 2038. Powell is just up at next year. Could this just kind of be a feeling out to see if Trump can actually do this?
I mean, I guess you could look at it that way. I don't think so. I mean, the Fed has 7 members on the Board of Governors in Washington, and Trump would like to get a majority on that board. There's 2 Trump appointees on that board now. It looks like he can fill a vacancy with Stephen Miran, and now he would like another vacancy so that he could add a 4th seat, and then he would have control of the Fed board. From there, that's a springboard into really influencing the Fed. There's a lot of different things that could happen. So he kind of wants that seat no matter how he can get it, and that's what it looks like they're really doing this blitz to to get a seat on there. We'll see how it goes. It's it is unprecedented, as you said earlier, and it probably is going to end up in the Supreme Court that's going to have a say here.
Yeah, that is so very true, obviously. Before we move that way, let's rewind just a little bit and talk about who exactly Lisa Cook is, because, of course, she was appointed by President Biden in 2022, but she served under both Republican and Democratic administrations, including George W. Bush, Obama, Clinton, just to name a few. She also, though, only made it with a tie-breaking vote, a 50-50 split. Why was it the case? Can you glean any information from why she got that 50-50 split, the vice president ultimately breaking that tie back in 2022?
Well, I mean, I think over the reason that this split it was a very kind of a bitter fight. The Senate has been fighting over Fed nominees, increasingly fighting over Fed nominees. In the old days, the Fed was very kind of sleepy, but things have happened over the years where make those things contentious. And I think Cook was just sort of a victim of that Senate contentiousness. She's a remarkable woman. I mean, the economics profession is very white, male dominated, and she rose as a researcher. She caught the attention of like the best economists in the country. They sort of took her under their wings, and she really shined. So it wasn't a surprise that she was picked for the Fed. She had done a lot of the work needed to do that.
Yeah, no, that is very true. And it's good that you laid some of the groundwork on her background as well, because it's an impressive career and she could be on the board until 2038 if this doesn't go through. What has this kind of meant to the market? Do we see any reaction from investors? I know we had talks last week about Jerome Powell signaling a rate cut. Did this next removal or try to remove Lisa Cook, did that impact the markets at all?
There's a muted response today to this. I think that's cost a lot of people that really think the Fed independence is central to the United States economy. They're worried a little bit about how the market was sort of brushing this off. But sometimes with financial markets, things don't happen when you expect them to happen, and things can take time to kind of develop. But the early response to this was kind of muted. Cook she's an economic researcher. She hasn't been out there she's not in the spotlight. Her views on monetary policy, she hasn't been giving speeches. She isn't all that well known. So I think that's one of the reasons that it maybe is a little bit muted. And a lot of people think that the market just doesn't think this is going anywhere, and that it's a big fight that's not going anywhere, that the Supreme Court will kind of side with the Fed here. So there's a couple of different strands that make it seem like it's muted, but the market's only muted for one day, and then you wake up the next day and you'll see things can be different.
Yeah, that's the way the market works. It's ever changing. I do want to put up the statement from Lisa Cook and her attorneys about this, saying the president has no authority to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. His attempt to fire her based solely on this referral letter lacks any factual or legal basis. He will be filing a lawsuit. We will be filing a lawsuit against this legal action. And there's potentially talks about this upcoming September meeting that's going to be taking place in just a few short weeks. Will Lisa Cook be present for that? Yes?
I'll have to say maybe on that. I mean, things are happening pretty quickly here. I mean, I think all things equal, she'll be there, but this is going to go to court, and we'll have to see how the court rules. And so I don't want to get ahead of that. I think she hopes that the court will let her stay at the Fed while she fights this. The Supreme Court has hinted that they might let a Fed governor stay in place while this was being fought, but that's a couple steps down the road. So we'll have to see about September. I think this doesn't really sort of impact the sense that the Fed is going to cut interest rates in September. There's a lot of support among the central bankers for that. This is a whole kind of different, it's not a sideshow, I would say, but this is more about like longer term structural issues. It's not about like where interest rates are going to be today, tomorrow, or Thursday.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A whole new ball game. All right, Greg, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. Great insight and background here on Live Now.
My pleasure. Have a great night.